Hi guys, happy Witchy Wednesday. No. Hold on. Hold please. It's Tuesday. Never mind. It's not Witchy Wednesday, sorry. So, alright, very interesting stuff. I've researched and I have not seen this on YouTube. Oh, sorry. Anywhere, basically. So, I thought I would go ahead and do this. So I did a little research on 1984, Wes Craven's A Nightmare on Elm Street. And it's very, very, very scary to know that this actually did come from a true story from Cambodia. So they want to call it SUDS, which we'll get into here in just a minute. So I found a bunch of stuff. I thought I'd put together a PowerPoint presentation. It's not a PowerPoint presentation, it's just notes. So it was pretty cool though. I mean, Freddy Krueger is, one of the most iconic figures in film history, obviously. I mean, how many do we have? Almost like 20, I think. So I grew up with Freddy, Poltergeist, Jason. Freddy was always my favorite. Always loved him, always loved that glove. Always loved that glove. It was amazing. So yeah, he is one of the most iconic figures in film history. And nobody can ever do as best as Wes Craven did. So, although he missed the initial slasher craze, which the slasher craze was from 1978 to 1981 by 3 years. So his visage has become symbolic of not just the slasher subgenre, but horror itself. Alright, so we have Freddy first, and then comes Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees, or Forerunners, who disguised their disfigurement behind masks. But Freddy's was, and still remains, hauntingly exposed. So, his visage remains etched in the minds of not just horror fans, but moviegoers around the world. So, directly or indirectly, Freddy as a character has inspired countless scary stories, and novels. But what was the inspiration behind the creation of Freddy Krueger? It's really, really odd that this is, very odd. So Wes Craven didn't just open up his brain one day and dig out a horror icon. So the idea of Freddy Krueger evolved over the course of a decade. So we can take a look at the origins of one of the most memorable characters in film history. So first we have Wes Craven's mind, which I would love to get into and talk to his mind, just his mind. Not him, just his mind. It's very interesting, So the seminal movie that had the greatest influence on Wes Craven was Night of the Living Dead. Very good movie. So that movie and its impact on audience helped Craven gravitate towards horror creatively during his years as a filmmaker. So, in 1972, he directed The Last House on the Left. I'm the last house on the left. Very strange, very neat. So, it was a brutal film by any standard, but especially when measured against, production norms of the early 1970s. So, in the movie, one of the villains, Weasel, has a dream where the family of one of the victims chisels his teeth out. So in the years following the film's release, many people Craven met would specifically mention that scene as one of the most memorable. So such feedback led Craven to conclude that a movie centered around scary dream sequences may have had a potential. So, it's pretty neat. It's pretty interesting. So in 1979, the Los Angeles Times reported that 3 unrelated people who were too terrified to go to sleep because of their nightmares. So they suffered from night terrors, which is very common. Night terrors are when you wake up in between sleep and reality and dreamland, and everything just morphs into something that you're subconsciously scared of. So for me, this rings very true to me. So I used to wake up and have complete night terrors. They were the scariest thing ever. So I used to have a rabbit named Nala, after New Orleans, and it would sleep up here, but I would wake up and have these crazy night terrors, and I would see him at the end of my bed. He was a show rabbit, a lop-eared, so very big, very large, big floppy ears, gorgeous. So I would see him at the end of my bed, torn apart, blood everywhere. Now, from this point right here onto that window, it was my bedroom. But from this point on, behind this, where all my closets are back there, this was all a boiler room. And I was not even, I mean, yes, of course, I've always been a Freddy fan, but this was not anything, nowhere near. I mean, it could have subconsciously been Freddy. Nightmare on Elm Street, the boiler room, didn't look like it, but it did have some of those characteristics. So the boiler room is what really got me. It just freaked me out so bad, and then I just wake up and go back to sleep. So, very, very, very odd. So, they were too terrified to go to sleep because of their nightmare. So each later died while sleeping. An autopsy could not determine the cause of death for these 3 people. So, Craven cited this occurrence as the impetus for a Nightmare on Elm Street. So what if the dreams they were having actually killed these men? And what if they were, all sharing a common frightening dream? So Craven asked himself, so I started constructing a villain that existed only in dreams. So it's really, really interesting. I mean, this is incredible. So many writers, obviously don't like talking about their ideas before they are fully formed. But Craven was just the opposite. Quote, he says, I usually try to think of how to describe the movie I'd like to make in about 1 minute. And I try that out on Friends because he says, I have found that a good script, especially a good genre script, has to be told almost like a good joke. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So Craven confessed in a late 1980s interview. Love that man. Love that man. Everything he does is just amazing. But still, the backstory behind this is really, really freaky. I mean, it is really, really freaky. Alright, so, the more times Craven told Friends about his idea, the more refined it became. So he says, eventually I was able to describe it as a story of a group of kids that all killed a man who is now coming back in the nightmares of their children. So it skips a generation down to another generation. I'm blurry, sorry guys. There we go. No, that just makes me even more blurry. There. Alright, so. But yes, alright, so then one girl succeeds in staying awake during the time he was assaulting all of her friends until she was able to devise a way to go into her dreams, capture him, and bring him out. And so that's really, really interesting. I like that theory. I like that idea. But is it true? Can we actually, I mean, we see all in, when Nancy is in the dream clinic and she's connected to all of the electrodes to her brain, her skull, and it's monitoring the brainwave action, saying how, what kind of a sleep she's going into, all of that. And it was like the Sleep Institute. So, and she brought back with her his hat. And the mom knew all this and never told her. So why didn't the mom tell her? It's very interesting. I mean, very interesting stuff. Alright, so, where did I go? Okay, so yes, she captures and bring him out. Everybody else thought she was either going crazy or told her she was going crazy because they were in denial in hiding their crime. So that really, really could be true too, that they all were in denial from hiding that crime. So that would give way to why the mothers and the parents, when they went and they burned down, Nancy's mom took her down to the boiler room and showed her the claw, the hand. But still, it is like Freddy is this thought form in these dreams, an archetypal energy. And I do believe that he has become an archetypal energy. I mean, he has to have been. So, but what person, living or dead, would be terrifying enough to form the basis of nightmares? Not just nightmares, but nightmares that killed the ones having them. So, alright, Freddy Krueger was a concoction born of many influences for Wes Craven. So, here's a look at the ingredients that Craven mixed together to conjure an original horror master. So, Freddy's name. So, Freddy was a bully. A kid named Krueger used to beat Craven up when he was younger. Childhood trauma is always a helpful muse, and that's true too. So yes, a previous character, the name Krueger, is an extension of the mortal human monster Krug from The Last House on the Left of 1972, which he directed. So the influence on Krug's name also probably derives from the bully named Kruger, but after Krug was given cinematic life, the name became more sinister, more emblematic of evil. So in the movie, Krug keeps his own son hooked on heroin as he tortures, rapes, and murders 2 teenage girls. It's so interesting. I mean, so interesting to get inside Wes Craven's mind. I just want to talk to him. I just want to sit down and have a conversation with him. Is he still alive? I hope. So, it could either have been an allusion to genocide. So, in post-Nightmare interview, Wes Craven stated that the name Kruger sounds German. So, he didn't elaborate, but why would it matter at all? It seems possible that Nazis, and in particular the ones who ran the experimentation camps for Hitler, were on his mind. The character Freddy, after all, was burned alive. Right here, we admit that this is a stretch, but why else would Craven care if the name sounded German, unless it was meant to inspire fear? What reference to Germans inspires the most fear? Now we have Freddy's appearance that we can go over, and I've always, since a kid, I have tried to make those gloves, and it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's not as easy as when you first see him, when the opening scene with the lamb and with the woman in the gown. I can't remember her name. Nancy's friend. I can't remember her name. It's been so long since I've watched it. But yeah, you see him making, he's in the boiler room, and he is making his claws. So, alright, so Craven's inspiration for the appearance of Freddy began when he saw a homeless man staring at him across the street. Oh wow, that's really scary. He was staring at him, so a homeless man was staring at Wes Craven across the street from his home in Los Angeles. So the episode unnerved Craven and was lurking in his imagination when attempting to picture how Freddy would look. So, the appearance of Robert Englund reminded Craven enough of the derelict to catch him. So the hat Englund would wear while portraying Freddy was a replica of the hat Craven saw on the homeless man. So it was a homeless man for the attire. Very interesting. The subconscious mind with Wes Craven is incredible. So what about his sweater though? So there was no, similar inspiration for Freddy's striped sweater. I have that sweater and I love it. The dark shade of blue matched a comparatively bright red, became the colors of Freddy's sweater only because Craven had read in Scientific American that they were the most difficult shades for the human eye to put together side by side. Yeah, it does look green. So, now we have the mask, everything that's going on with his face. So perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Freddy's visage is his scarred face. So Craven thought Freddy should have some sort of mask like slasher sensations Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers. Yet, because Freddy existed in a dream world, the mask didn't seem appropriate. So moreover, Craven couldn't come up with an idea for one that wasn't just a cheap copy of Freddy's Forerunners. So one night he was struck with an epiphany. He didn't need to put Freddy's face behind a mask. It was disfigured enough. The scars themselves would create a mask sufficient to hide the face and the terrifying audience. And terrifying the audience. So, where'd I go? So it's worth noting that by 1984, when Nightmare was made, makeup effects had advanced to the point to make such an idea workable. So when John Carpenter conjured Michael Myers, they had not. That's where the Spock mask came in, only painted and just disfigured. Which is still very interesting. Alright, the fingers. Where do these fingers come from? A desire to really scare his audience. That's for sure. So the essence of any slasher is a blade. The blade. Which they use to stalk their prey. Machetes and knives were the bread and butter of slashers from the early 1980s, so Craven knew he couldn't venture too far from the formula, but also wanted to make a statement that his slasher was the preeminent slasher. So instead of one knife, why not 5? One for each fingertip. Craven's tendency to feature primal thematic elements. Thematic elements. Think about that one. Thematic. 5. Inspired by natural phenomena, helped him see Freddy's fingers as potential knives. Stabbing and slashing digits occur everywhere in nature. I like that. I like where he's going with that. So, think of the talons of an eagle or the claws of a mountain lion. So, we have the epilogue. Craven finished the script for A Nightmare on Elm Street in 1981, so he showed it to Bob Shaye, one of the then small and struggling New Line Cinema. Shaye wanted the project immediately, but Craven spent the next 3 years shopping the idea around. So Hollywood hoping to get interest from a major studio. So he did not. Craven signed with New Line in 1984, and shooting was complete later that year, and it was a final budget of $1.8 million. So Nightmare's initial box office take was just over $25 million, but more than spawning one of horror's most profitable franchises, Nightmare introduced the character of Freddy Krueger into our cultural consciousness. He became an icon that would inspire untold numbers of horror stories and movies directly or indirectly related to him. So, this contributor, for one, owes a great deal to just the idea of Freddy Krueger. So, all we have to say is thank you, Wes. Thank you. Thank you. Alright, so pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. Alright, so we have the Cambodian killing field. And this is really interesting. This is really interesting. So the inspiration for the entire movie was based on the Cambodia field, the killing fields of Cambodia. So it's pretty sad. This is very, very odd. So, Wes was arguably the defining horror characters of the 1980s, but the real-life inspiration behind Freddy Krueger was darker and more disturbing than any of his on-screen kills. So, written and directed by Wes Craven, the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie hit the big screen in 1984. Story of 4 teenagers battling in their sleep against a disfigured demon with blades for fingers and a red and green striped sweater caught the public's imagination. So, alright, we have quite a lot. So, quite a lot to go to. Alright, so we know that, Krueger's sinister appearance in the movie was based on the young director watching an old man outside his window, the homeless man. So, now, this struck Craven after he read an article in the LA Times. The piece concerned for the killing fields, a series of locations in Cambodia where the brutal Khmer Rouge massacred the population in the later half of the 70s. So we have a lot of weird stuff. So a family had arrived in America, after fleeing the violence from Cambodia. So, though the trauma had clearly taken its toll on them, in particular, their son was experiencing vivid nightmares, where he was being pursued by some kind of monster. And that's really, really creepy, too. This is just, the possibility of this even happening, it's very scary. So, as told to Vulture, Craven said the son, quote, told his parents he was afraid that if he slept, the thing chasing him would get him. So he tried to stay awake for days at a time. But when he initially fell asleep, His parents thought the crisis was over. Then they heard screams in the middle of the night. By the time they got to him, he was dead. He was dead. He died in the middle of a nightmare. Died in the middle of a nightmare. How? Is the trauma... There's got to be something trauma-based, something scientific to prove it, and there's not. Not to my knowledge, and I've researched this all morning since 7:30. So the horrifying incident made a big impression on Craven. So obviously, following a bad period in his life where, substance abuse played a part among other issues, he eventually channels his energies into what became A Nightmare on Elm Street. So the film obviously famously ends with Freddy coming back after seemingly being destroyed, paving the way for Craven's follow-ups. Craven wasn't happy about the idea and wanted a more subtle approach. He didn't have anything to do with part 2. So it's just really weird. So there's just, I don't know. It's a very, very scared. So, but yeah, he didn't want anything to do with part 2. So, however, he returned to the franchise as a writer for 1987's Dream Warriors, the third in the sequence. So he then made one more stab, or slash, at Freddy in 1994 for Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which depicted Krueger as a real boogeyman terrorizing the movie cast. So the tale that planted the seed of Krueger in Craven's mind was harrowing and tragic. Despite this, the wisecracking Freddy's legacy is one of a humor and even a sense of nostalgia among people of a certain age. My generation, a lot of generations, England found himself going from terrifying dream invader to pop culture figure. So, in an interview with People Post, New York Post, last year, to promote his appearance on the Goldbergs Halloween special, he remarked, "In a strange, bizarre way, the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise became a sort of It's a Wonderful Life for Halloween. He gets stories from adults who have this memory of their family watching in the middle or late 80s, having walked home from the video store, popping in and out, and sending out for pizza. So this great nestling experience, cuddling with dad or mom before they passed away, watching and getting scared." It's amazing. It really is amazing. So now we have to figure out the killing fields. Alright, so yeah, this is really scary. I mean, lots of these people reported having something, sleep paralysis, something sitting on their chest, a white lady, a figure. So it's really, really weird. So the killing fields in Cambodia, Destination 19, Killing Fields, Cambodia. So the killing fields are a number of sites in Cambodia where more than 1 million people were killed and buried by Khmer Rouge, the regime, during its rule from 1975 to 1979. Now we have related film, A Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984. So, yeah, it's really, really weird. So, So, I don't have much on the whole Cambodian thing, but I mean, it's really, really, really odd. So, I don't know. The killing fields is very scary. Very, very scary. It's just seriously very scary. No, I don't want to subscribe to anything. So, yeah, it's really, really creepy. All these movies that are based on true stories. But yeah, these people, they died in their sleep. And it's just really freaky. How do you die in your sleep? So, what do you guys think? We have so many that are based, even Child's Play. So we have all these that are based on true events. So, yeah, it was called Sun's Syndrome. S-U-N-D-S. Sun's Syndrome. And that's where they would have all these nightmares, and these crazy things would happen to them, and they would report, everybody in the camp, they would report having some white, ghostly figure sitting on them. When they would go to move or scream or something, they couldn't. They were paralyzed, so that's sleep paralysis. But we do have scientific evidence behind why sleep paralysis is happening and why. Well, actually, no, there's not. So, there's really not much about sleep paralysis. They have some insights on it, but not much, so. I mean, really, honestly, who dies in their dreams? That's one scary thing to happen. I mean, that's something to think about tonight before you guys go to sleep. So, alright guys, I hope you enjoy. If you guys like this, let me know below. Please, if you do, and I know YouTube is very bad at getting people to know that I am available, or when I go on live, or when my video pops up. So down at the bottom, click on the little the bell, and that just make sure that you know when I'm live, so you guys don't miss it, because I see a lot of people in my comments saying, oh fuck, I missed it. So that will make sure that you do get the notifications for my videos when they pop up. So yes, just amazing to see how Freddy, how he was created, how he was conjured up. So if you guys like this one, I will go ahead and I will continue with some more movies that are really creepy with real life, backgrounds. We've already obviously done The Conjuring, obviously Annabelle and Chucky, so I'm sure there's more, but it's just very creepy. But alright guys, I hope you enjoy. So think about this tonight before you go to sleep, and let me know what you guys dream. So I love you guys very much, all the way from Venus all the way back down, and I will see you all tomorrow. So thank you guys for watching, and yeah, sweet dreams.